Every year, one of us is chosen to learn the truth about our family. Their name is pulled from a nice glass bowl. Everyone cheers. And then they are brought down to the basement to bring in the new year, while everyone else parties. Last year, I found out, and I refused to hold it from anyone for another year. It's not right. We all arrived at Grandpa Luke's estate at 7 today for supper, and lined ourselves around the long banquet table. At one end, Grandpa Luke and Grandma Jane sat at the head of the table with their children, my parents and 6 aunts and uncles. All of them had been brought down to the basement, except for my Uncle Joe and his wife, Laura. I watched from the opposite end as Uncle Joe, dressed in his best suit, picked at his roast, eyeing the fine crystal bowl above the fireplace anxiously. He would likely feel better had new names not been added for every new marriage into the family and every new child born. There's no age limit for being brought below. As well, there's always the few papers marked with a small X. I'm sorry, everybody. Grandpa Luke would announce if those were pulled. Looks like this is an off year. Uncle Ollie, look. My niece, Leia, was perched on her seat beside me. She had molded her mashed potatoes into the shape of a mermaid, with 2 peas as brilliant green eyes. My jaw dropped in perform for kids amazement. Oh wow, that is such good work, little Leia. She giggled, fixed her thin blonde hair and responded with a proud, yeah. She's not one for thank yous, which hey, more power to her. I love her stubborn self-confidence. I've sat on the kids' end every year, even when I got into my mid-20s. They're such brilliant little critters, and I know that if they were in charge, everyone would know about the basement, and we would be doing something about it. But that's tradition for you. Someone way back in our lineage decided, no, we keep this a secret. And ever since then, it's been one person at a time, 1 year at a time. But we deserve to know. Everyone deserves to know. A glass shattered. All eyes went to Cassidy, my brother Steven's new wife. Deep red wine was slowly spreading across the tablecloth, and her face was in her hands, her head bobbing in laughter. I'm so sorry, she choked out between chuckles. Steven's just such a... She fell into her lap. It certainly wasn't her first wine. Steven gave everyone a look to let them know that he had it under control, and he helped her to her feet. He put one hand around her waist and began leading her away. She tittered once more. Oh my, maybe I should go lay down for a bit. Is Auntie Cass okay? Leia asked, fiddling with her clean and pressed dress. Oh, she's fine, sweetie. But just as they had passed the oaken door frame and turned left towards their room, I saw her face break into streaks of tears, and a certain sickness take hold of her as she gripped her stomach. Well, my Grandpa Luke exclaimed, brushing off his hands in front of him. Wasn't that just delectable? If a couple of these strapping young men come help me with the dishes, we can bring out the dessert. This was the one day that my grandparents gave their staff the night off. So myself and my Uncle Joe and my dad all started gathering the best finery my family had. Not before I helped Leia off her chair and brought her over to the play area with the other kids. There was a Jenga set about her height over there, and they had all been eyeing it all night. Last thing I saw before getting to the dishes was little Jacob, only 4 years older than Leia and having already been brought down to the basement 3 years back. pulling blocks from the middle, slowly and methodically. We stacked everything in neat piles and transferred much of it into their dishwasher, and then stood about reminiscing over the year behind us. "Your little ones are getting so tall," Grandpa had remarked to Uncle Joe. Joe rubbed his bald head with a smile. "Yeah, and they're also getting to be a handful, and we need to find a way to afford a nanny to help things out." Grandpa deftly ignored the hint with a soft nod. "Of course, a good nanny can be difficult to come by." I poured myself a glass of beer and then one for my dad. "Thanks, Oliver," he muttered. He was also clearly worried about who was going down there tonight. At the very least, he didn't agree with having the kids be an option. He would say, "They're too young to handle this." I suppose that's where I get my rebellious spirit. Stephen joined us in the kitchen, a somewhat apologetic smile on his face. "Cassidy's taking a nap. She'll be fine for the countdown, don't worry." "Of course. Wonderful young lady you have there," my grandpa said. "Yeah, she's perfect. Things are just pretty stressful and cheese." Stephen thought for a moment. "Yeah, she's adapting. Cassidy's name had been drawn 2 years ago." "Of course she is. She's strong and I can tell," Grandpa assured him. After that, we all returned to the table for the pies and cakes, another sweep of dishes, and the folks spread out to their own areas for the couple of hours before the countdown. My dad stuck near my grandpa, irritating to me, while my Uncle Joe rejoined with the rest of the men to give my grandpa some space. He knew he had made his one push for some help, for maybe his name to appear from that bowl, and now he needed to back off. I sat with my mom and my sister as they chatted about our ski retreat in January, about our beautiful Christmas tree, about my sister's financier fiance and how much they wished he could have joined us. But it's a family-only affair, of course, and marriage is what truly makes someone family. Frickin' traditions. I turned to the kids' area again. Leia was sobbing in a corner. It was probably nothing. Kids cry all the time, but I went over there anyways. "What's up, little Leia?" I asked. "Jacob keeps hogging all the pieces," she sniffled. Jacob did indeed have a massive collection of the blocks, almost enough to build the full tower. "Did you try talking to Jacob's mom, or one of the other adults?" "Yeah, but they said it was fine," she pouted indignantly. "Of course they did." "No, listen, sweetheart. Sometimes all these grown-ups think what they say is right, that Jacob deserves the blocks that he has. But that's all bullhooey, you hear me?" I paused so she could giggle. "You deserve just as much of what you want as Jacob does, maybe even more. You just gotta take it like he did." Leia nodded. "Thanks, Uncle Ollie." She wrapped her little arms around me and then ran off. I figured if there was any time to do what I needed to do, it was right now. I walked across the dining hall, through the wide door frame and towards my grandpa's study. Inside, I found him chatting with my dad, still. I clenched my jaw. "Hey Dad, Mom wants to chat with you. Something about the ski trip, it sounds important." "Oh," he said. He grabbed his beer, cheersed Grandpa, and walked by me. "I don't want you making a fuss," he said to me in passing. "It's fine," I replied, entirely non-committal. I casually closed the door behind me. Grandpa smiled at me brightly, swirling a glass of whiskey. "Oh, how's your year been, Oliver?" he asked. "I understand you've been doing very well at your programming, was it?" "Yeah, doing well, but could be doing better." I sat down at the chair beside him. "I was wondering if we could chat really quick." He sighed and set his glass down. Of course, what would you like to talk about? The basement was all that I gave him. Of course, he repeated. It's been quite a year for you, I imagine. A lot of big changes. But usually when one of the family's name is drawn on New Year's, the following year is the most prosperous time of their life. They skyrocket. He knew what I was going to say. I had talked with my parents in tears multiple times in those early months, so they had to have brought him in. I don't think it's right. Another soft nod. Oh, I understand, but this is the best way of doing it. How do you know? I asked, my voice raising. We've never tried anything else. It has been working for hundreds of years. He spoke only with a chuckle. At some point down the line, from my great-great-great-grandparents onwards, if it needed to change, it would have done so by now. Everyone deserves to know. I mean Christ, the world deserves to know. That really got his attention. Plenty of us had talked about telling everyone in the family, but no one had dared to bring up the idea that the world finds out what goes on deep beneath this building. No one dared tell anyone else what we were. Grandpa Luke pointed one stern finger at me. You know dang well what you're proposing could get you. His eyes sunk deeper, shadows casting over the whites of his eyes. I felt the movement wriggling through my abdomen and up my chest. My face turned into a grimacing snarl before he could even react. He was getting old and weak. My jaw disconnected from my face, allowing the hole of my mouth to spread wide open, as well as my throat to match it. Before he could even move, my maw spread almost to the hardwood floor. Oliver, no, he yelled out. But they were coming. Countless writhing tentacle-like worms, all of colors known to man and otherwise, exploded from me and engulfed his form. Before he could cry out or make another sound, some of these silvery worms slipped into his mouth and flew down to where his own lay, old and weak, to devour them. I heard their cries in my mind, not in the air, but they didn't cry for long, and the sounds were overwhelmed by the sounds of my own moaning and elation, the sound of power. As the worms retreated to my body, there was nothing left of the old man. Not a speck of red, nor a scrap of meat. I grabbed his whiskey. Uncle Joe stood at the door. His eyes were wide in shock, but he didn't make a sound. I locked eyes with him for some time in that empty room, and then he swallowed hard, nodded, and walked away. Uncle Ollie, Uncle Ollie! Leia called to me as I re-entered the dining room. I built a huge tower. I picked her up in my arms and looked at the magnificent creation, all slanty and full of gaps. Oh, that's gorgeous. Hey, sweetie, you want to come look at the fire? Yeah. We wandered over to the fire where I set her down to marvel. While she did, I grabbed the crystal bowl, played around the little slips of paper, and then pulled one out. Joe Tremblay. Looks like it was your lucky year. Regardless, Uncle Joe. I threw the bowl and the papers out. Hey Leia, you want to know something? I asked her, crouching down to her level. She nodded enthusiastically. We're doing things extra special this year. You, Uncle Joe, Aunt Cassidy, Mama, we're all going down to the basement together. She clapped in surprise, made an exaggerated, gasping face, and I did too, opening my jaw just slightly wider. At midnight, we're going to head on down. Down those slick stone steps. Far too many, far too dark. And at the bottom, in that pool of water that goes down, God knows how much farther, Something so powerful awaits. What belongs to us? What is us? And it needs a nice, warm home. Everybody, Grandma Jane called out, oblivious. It's getting closer to the countdown. Gather up. I stood up and took Leia's tiny hand. The whole family deserves to know. The whole world will know. And they aren't ready.